Hello and welcome to your presumably seventh graders curriculum night. My name is Kate Motter and here we go. Hello, my name is Kate Motter and I will be your child's language arts teacher for for this current school year. A little bit about me before we get on to the curriculum, which I'm sure is what you're here for. I got my undergraduate degree of English literature with concentration in writing at at Goucher College. There we go. My master's at the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities, and well, that's about it for education. So I have two dogs, Jack and Toast. They're both corgis. They're half siblings. And they take up a lot of my time. Toast, for example, ate literally a pound of beef jerky when I went to school this morning. She's on a diet. Other than that, I have a voracious obsession with stories, media of all kinds, bookshelf, video games, movies, podcasts, you name it. I'm into it. And I love my job. So to properly cover all of the things that we go through in seventh grade language arts, we would be here all night. So this is more of a bird's eye view of the major steps or units that we take as a collective language arts team. So Unit 1, which we're just about to start actually tomorrow, is like a constellation of short stories and poetry and selections from memoirs, etc., to dive into the concept of identity and what it is and different types of identities and how you gain new identities and how you're not always going to be a middle schooler, etc. Unit 2 is our first novel study, which is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, which is sort of tied to Unit 3. They're kind of overlaps because we use the text of The Outsiders as the basis for students' expository essay writing. Unit 4 is all about Native American literature circles, and a literature circle is about 6 texts that we do not have time to read collectively. So students get to choose amongst the books which ones they're actually interested the most in exploring. All of them are, this year, all of them will be written by Native American authors, and they are about Native American topics, generally modern Native American topics. Unit 5, which may or may not be in between Unit 4 and 6, we kind of stick it in whenever we have time, wherever it makes sense, like at the end of a trimester or at the beginning. But we want to make sure we hit on poetry as well as narrative writing because it's fun, and 2, it is extremely rewarding and it's just good to take a break from expository and argumentative writing. And the last novel study that we do as a class is a book called Ghost Boys by Jewel Parker Rhodes. In addition to the standard curriculum, our students also do an independent reading project. The why is big and varied. I really want to reward students for what they're actually already interested in reading, but it's also an opportunity to dip their toes into some literary analysis, which we practice all year. It also acts as a vocabulary boost. Student choice is incredibly important in any aspect, particularly around their education. It breeds fluency, it adds to reading comprehension, there's a schema of prior knowledge. I could go on, but it is good for students to read. So a little bit more about the independent reading project. Students will read a minimum of 5 texts per trimester, and a text is big and varied. So some people prefer hard copies of books, some people prefer audiobooks. Some students are into podcasts, poetry. I allow films, just one per trimester, but you can watch a film because films are rich in things you can analyze. Same with video games. Has to have a narrative, has to have a story. So no Candy Crush, no Fortnite, but absolutely yes to Zelda, which is an epic. Ask me if you have any questions about that. But regardless of what students are reading, they will log what texts they are engaging with on an independent reading genre log. I call them genres and texts interchangeably, but point is to have a varied exposure to different types of stories and texts. Once a month, students will be writing/discussing one of the 3 ways that we will practice analyzing texts all year, starting this week for some of us. But those 3 ways are making text-to-text connections, identifying themes in stories, as well as identifying whether the text is something called a window or a mirror to them. So basically, do you see yourself in this story? If so, where and why, and how do you feel about it? Or if it's a window, what can you learn from this character or culture or identity that is unfamiliar to you? And then once a trimester, students will write a 3-paragraph reflection, or you could call it analysis, but I don't call it analysis with the students. But basically an analysis essay using those 3 methods of analysis, just as another way to practice analysis, which is fun. Regarding grading, we are all working to implement grading for equity practices into our classrooms at IMS this year. I am on the pilot team, and therefore my Skyward Gradebook will reflect these new practices. For lots more detailed information, please watch the video entitled G4E. It has a lot more information than I have time to include. However, here is a quick infographic of how I explain standards-based grading to my students. The point of standards-based grading is to assess skill or mastery of content over things like behavior. So it's traditionally with a 4-point scale. That's it. So I highly recommend avoiding percentages entirely, because a 3, which is at standard, out of 4 as a percentage is 75%. And percentages don't really mesh with standards-based grading. So my first advice is don't pay attention to percentages, because they are just not an accurate representation of your student's grade. And again, this is a student's view of how to understand the grade that they are receiving. But it's not too much more complicated than what you're looking at. So that your student may score a 1 if they're just getting started, if they're just getting the hang of the basics. Number 2 is an almost there, which is generally a student can do the skill or understand the content with assistance. And a 3 is at standard. 3 is proficiency has been demonstrated with the standard. An exemplary is taking the skill that the student just learned and doing something bigger with it. Sometimes that's as simple as, well, you can teach it. You can teach this concept to someone else, which definitely demonstrates mastery. Can attest. Or applying it to a broader context than the skill itself. That was a very quick glimpse into what we're going to do all year, but please contact me with any questions that you have. Email is the best way to contact me throughout the year, and I look forward to hearing from you.